This is the Cubs Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Chicago Cubs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on? Welcome into the Locked On Cubs Postcast here on the Locked On Cubs YouTube channel as the Chicago Cubs advance to the National League Division Series. They beat the Padres 3-1. There's so much to go through in this game today. From what we saw from Jameson Taillon, the bullpen, the stressful ending, Dansby Swanson, the lineup putting up 13 hits. There's a ton to get to in this game. But overall, I'm just so happy to see the Cubs advance in the playoffs. It's been a long time, it feels like. It has been a long time since the Cubs have done this. And when it mattered most, the guys they needed to came through. And that's what, to me, stood out today. Even though they didn't score as many runs as they could have, the fact that the Cubs had 13 hits in this game, PCA a multi-hit game, Kyle Tucker a multi-hit game, Michael Busch the big home run. The lineup, it looks like it's starting to warm up a little bit after this one. I mean, more hits in this game than the first two ones. That's the ultimate optimist view of what we saw today. You guys, your comments will be welcome here live on YouTube in the chat. We will start today's show off really with we're going to do Locked On Player of the Series.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
For today, for this entire series, it's Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson, what he did in this series, a player that so many Cubs fans, we get frustrated with Dansby. We get frustrated with the way that he performs at times in the lineup. We saw him move down in the lineup, up in the lineup throughout the year. But his defense in this series was just spectacular. I mean, he was making plays. It's every penny you've paid Dansby Swanson, and you will pay Dansby Swanson. This series is why. I don't know if the Cubs win this series without him at shortstop, with the plays that he was making in game one and the ones that we saw him making in game three today. He has just been fantastic. Nails, honestly. You could not ask for more from your starting shortstop to make big plays when it's needed. And Nico Hoerner, too, that jumping catch that he had in this game was absolutely incredible. But Dansby Swanson deserves so much credit. We saw his bat come to use as well in this series, but his defense was just so spectacular. And it's why the Cubs have, you look at a winning formula, like one of the things you need to have is elite defense, and they have it. With Nico, Dansby, and Shaw in their infield, they can make it so challenging. Michael Busch is really good at first base as well. You have PCA in center field. You have Ian Happ and Kyle Tucker in the outfield, who both won Gold Gloves. They have one of the formulas to go deep in the playoffs, and that is elite defense. And they showed it, and Dansby specifically showed it in this series. He deserves so much credit for the Cubs winning this series because of what he did at the shortstop position. But for today, you got a lot of contributions from a lot of guys on this roster. Guys, some of them who haven't contributed much through the first two games of the series leading into today. We'll start with Jameson Taillon, who we saw on the bump. He was great. I mean, he was throwing strike after strike after strike. He was in full-on attack mode in this game. I was really, really impressed with what we saw from Jameson Taillon. And it raises some questions about how Craig Counsell's going to do. Matt and Sam were just live. So if you, after this show, you want to go watch what they just did and what they just talked about. But, like, how is Craig Counsell going to approach the series against the Brewers? I'm fascinated by, because is he going to go with the opener again in front of, Shota Imanaga again? But Taillon's going to be starting. Boyd's going to be starting. But even who's starting on Saturday feels like it's up in the air. It could be Colin Ray and potentially the return of Cade Horton in this series. The pitching throughout this entire series was really at a different level. Like, outside of the home run that Shota Imanaga gives up, I mean, from game one through game three, in both game one and game two, you have multiple runners on base in the first inning, and they're able to get out of it without allowing major damage. Your rotation in your bullpen today in game three, outside of the home run there by Jackson Merrill off of Keller, which we'll discuss on the show as well, that decision to put him back out there for the ninth inning. These guys were just nails. I mean, Daniel Palencia, not being in the closer role, looks even more comfortable than he did when he was, as the closer of the Cubs. And he was really good for the most part. But that last, month of the season, plus a little bit, Daniel Palencia was not very good. And he goes on the injured list. And what he's been coming off the injured list has been very impressive. I mean, he's really the only guy who can compete in terms of velocity with what the Padres were throwing out there. And even though the Cubs bullpen was excellent in this series, I have so much jealousy of what the Padres were doing because they had guys left and right coming out of the bullpen throwing 101, 102 miles an hour, 104 miles an hour for Mason Miller in this series. But the bullpen deserves a lot of credit, not just the starters, but the bullpen. I mean, you don't have Boyd, Taillon, or Shota go very deep into these games. And a bullpen that, if you think back to the start of the season, was not very good, but to how it finishes now with Drew Pomeranz, Daniel Palencia, Andrew Kittredge, Brad Keller, these guys, that's your core. So you've got the defense, you've got good enough starting pitching, I think, and then your bullpen has shown in this series that against a really talented lineup, they can go in there and they can shove with the best of them. Those guys really put the Cubs in position to win the series. And they were the reason why the Cubs were in contention for even game 2 of the series that they lost. The fact that the Padres weren't able to score a lot of runs. A large part of that is also due to what you got from the bullpen. So just phenomenal performances from all of those guys. Now, Brad Keller obviously got a little dicey there. We don't want to ignore that. You don't ignore in victory what you wouldn't in defeat. I think the decision, I know Sam and I disagree with this. I heard them talking about it before. I personally think it's the right decision to leave Keller out there with how good he's been. I know he's only done this. This is the 4th time he was attempting to get 6 outs in a game. So I'm fine with Keller with that decision there. Where I disagree with Craig Counsell is I would have had, Boyd, which was shocking, and Kittredge ready to go a little bit quicker. Probably after that home run, bring in the next guy then. Don't let the inning get away from you in the way that it did. I mean, 2 hit by pitches that were concerning a little bit, to be honest, because you look at Carson Kelly, he's framed on the left side of the plate, on the outside basically, and those changeups are missing on the opposite side and hitting dude. So Keller was definitely losing it there. So I'm fine with the idea of sending Keller out there for the 9th inning because he's been so good for the Cubs this year. And the last time he did get 6 outs wasn't a win in July against the Milwaukee Brewers, but I would have had the next arm ready more quickly. That's where I think Craig Counsell definitely may have misstepped there, but in the end, it doesn't matter. 1st and 2nd, 1 out, and Andrew Kittredge comes in and gets it done. And it wasn't a great deadline for the Cubs. We all kind of know that. We recognize that. Rogers hasn't been, phenomenal. Hasn't been good. Willie Castro hasn't brought you much. I don't think we'll see him much in the postseason, no matter how long it goes. This is your lineup, and they're going to stick to it for the most part. But Kittredge, that's a check in the W column for Jed Hoyer, who has kind of put this bullpen together, by rejects and guys that you're taking big swings on, like Drew Pomeranz, that have worked out. What Keller got cut by one of the worst teams in baseball history last year, and he comes in here and he has been absolutely nails for the Cubs. So we talked about the pitching. We talked about the defense. We'll take a break here, our one break of the show. We'll get to your guys' comments and questions here in the chat. We'll talk about what we saw from the lineup. We'll get to our turning point and what you'll be talking about in this game as well. That's all coming up next year on the Locked On Cubs postcast. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I had a buddy of mine sending me some screenshots of some PrizePicks plays. He was playing on the less than Kyle Tucker's run hits and RBIs. He was wrong in that one. So you're not always right, but hey, I'm glad he was wrong about Kyle Tucker in this one. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Today's show is also brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees, it takes all the fun out of it. And that's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Get on Game Time now because we get to buy tickets to the National League Division Series to see the Cubs back at Wrigley Field, to go to Wrigley North to see them take on the Brewers. It's the perfect series in terms of going to games and using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Game Time app.
This episode
today.
is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
All right, let's get to some of the questions and comments here in the chat, and we'll talk about what we saw from the lineup today. Twig says here in the chat, Swanson was no doubt the MVP. We talked about that at the start of the show. Yeah, just his defense was phenomenal. And look, I mean, he was getting hits in this series as well. Dansby Swanson so far is the leading candidate for the MVP of the postseason for the Cubs, no matter how long it goes. It was great to see PCA also, as we'll talk here about the lineup, get a couple hits in this game, get 3 of them, one of them being an RBI. Look, that's a guy, him and Kyle Tucker both. There are players that you need to have success in the postseason to advance. But the reason why, if the Cubs are going to make a legit run this year and have a chance to take down the Brewers and then either the Phillies or the Dodgers and then get to the World Series and hopefully win the World Series, and while that's a lot of games away, if it were to happen, what we saw today from Pete Crow-Armstrong and Kyle Tucker, it has to be the start. Seeing both those guys get multi-hit games. They're the 2 best, most dynamic hitters. Maybe not the best, but Kyle Tucker's the best. But the most dynamic hitters in your lineup are PCA and Kyle Tucker. So hopefully today is a sign of things to come, because what you've gotten from them obviously hasn't been the best. Most of this lineup, honestly, we all know that. Like since the All-Star break, it's been brutal. But we're also seeing Seiya Suzuki do something that is a little shocking, to go from in the mud in the way that he was to as an elite of a hitter again very quickly. I mean, just coming through in this series, like 4 or 5 straight games with a home run. He is just seeing the baseball at a very, very high level. That to me is the one thing that stands out the most of what the lineup has been in this series, is just what we're seeing from Seiya Suzuki. And again, 13 hits in the ball game today, more hits in today's game than the previous 2 games. All of that is a good sign. Now, obviously, you want to nitpick here a little bit. Not a lot of runs for 13 guys on base, but I'll take it as a positive just to get the guys on against a Padres pitching staff that is incredible. Like, I would have liked to see the Cubs get more than 2 runs off of Yu Darvish there to get more runs in that inning, but beggars can't be choosers, and honestly, they won. So does it really matter today? No, that's more of a conversation for if the Cubs postseason, or when the Cubs postseason actually ends. All right, let's get to our turning point of today's game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost.
Oh, there it is.
It's the turning
All
point.
right, it's not going to work. Well, let's go to our turning point of today's game. All right, the turning point of today's game for the Cubs. I am going to look, though, at the Michael Busch home run. Even though it wasn't the end-all, be-all in this game because he won by 2 runs, Michael Busch putting that ball into the stands, to me, is where the Cubs really won this game. I don't think anyone felt comfortable with where the Cubs were at, because the Padres were going to get a chance, and they had a chance there in the bottom of the 9th inning. I mean, the top of the 9th inning. It felt like in the moment the game was slipping away. But when you look back at it, just having that extra run of support, if Kittredge is not able to get out of that inning super clean, then you have that extra run. That to me is the moment that really felt like it was the Cubs' victory. I even heard Matt say, like, on Matt and Sam's show, like, that's when he started prepping all of his Brewer stuff, is when Michael Busch hit that home run. But a guy that now just hit his 35th home run of the season this year. He has been I've really enjoyed what we've seen from him out of the top of the order. I think in a perfect world, I still would love to see Nico up there most of the time, but I like the lineup construction that Craig Counsell is go with. And I know a lot of people, like specifically yesterday, were asking for Ian Happ to move down in the lineup. And I get it, but I think for what we're going to see going forward, this is the group. I really don't think we're going to see many changes going forward. Nick says here in the chat, he thinks it was when the Padres pulling Yu Darvish earlier than he expected. Maybe it was too soon, but that he thought that was the turning point. Honestly, I get where you're coming from, and I do agree, but I think it's also just an indicator. I think the Cubs put up a big number there if they don't yank Yu Darvish in the way they did. I think going forward, like you think about the Brewers series coming up for the Cubs, I do hope Craig Counsell manages in a similar fashion there. That if you're in a situation where your starting pitcher is struggling and it's given up a couple runs, you got to go to your bullpen early. You got to play that aggressive. And it worked out for the Padres. You know, they like their bullpen came in and really were able to dominate the Cubs again until the Michael Busch home run. But that group was shutting down the Cubs from the first game of the series all the way through the third. So I think it was the right decision to take Darvish out. I think we all would have liked Darvish to stay in. I think this also means the Cubs officially won the Owen Casey trade. Now that you advance in the playoffs off of a Yu Darvish start, I think they probably would have won it anyways with what we see from Casey next year. But I think this gives the W for it. Kevin says they'll be the same lineup against the Brewers. Yeah, this is the group. This is going to be the order. This is the group. The only thing that potentially will change in the lineup going forward, I think, will be if Kyle Tucker ends up being healthy enough to play in right field. My argument against that, and why at this point, even though Seiya Suzuki is not a good right fielder as Kyle Tucker, there's something weird about baseball players where they're just more comfortable if they're in the lineup and they're in the field. And the way Seiya is hitting right now, I don't think I change anything. I think I keep this thing as status quo as much as possible for the Cubs and really just let this lineup hope to continue off of today's performance and even the back-to-back home runs in game one of the series and really just keep it rolling that way. So, yeah, I think this is it. This is what we're going to see going forward. We're going to see Ballesteros only in pitch hitting situations. Same thing with a guy like Justin Turner. We're not going to see him coming off the bench for pinch hitting for Michael Busch and let's say late game situation against a lefty. This is the group going forward, and I think we all should feel good about it. I think we feel great about it because there's still a lot to be left, to be desired. But for today, it's a great win for the Cubs. So it's awesome to see them back in the National League Division Series. We won't go for the graphic again in case it doesn't work, but that's what we're all talking about now is what is it going to look like on Saturday? Who's going to be on the mound? So they play on Saturday, then they'll play on Monday. So kind of a weird schedule to start off the NLDS. I'm kind of glad it's not back-to-back days like we saw in this one. It is stressful. And it's good for the bullpen too because, to kind of go full circle here, we talked about how good the bullpen pitching was in this series and these guys, the way that you use them. The good thing about the schedule going forward is you'll never have to ask Kittredge to go 3 straight days again. That's the best part about this. So to see what this group can do going forward, it's going to be really interesting and really fascinating to see what the rotation plans are for Craig Counsell. I think it's going to be Colin Ray in game one, but it wouldn't shock me if it's Boyd either. I think Colin Ray, the argument for me against using Colin Ray is because if you have to go short on a start for one of your guys because they're struggling, that's the guy that you want to come in and help give you some length in this series. So it's going to be Boyd or Ray, my guess is, for the first game of this series. All right, that will do it for us today. Matt and Sam already went live, so you can check out their show if you haven't yet on Apple or Spotify or right here on YouTube. We're going to be here, all three of us in some capacity throughout the entire postseason. Same format, most likely. They're going to go first. They're going to do their 30-minute show. I'll be going live after. So we'll have about 45 to 50 minutes of content for you guys after every single Cubs game, the rest of the postseason, whatever it is. Hopefully it's a lot more than just a 5-game series coming up here for the Cubs. Thank you all for watching, hanging out with us here tonight on YouTube. For all that listen on Apple and Spotify and the podcast, the audio version of the show as well. So thank you guys for listening. Have a good night. Go Cubs. We'll talk to you on Saturday after game 1 against